Today I'm going to be talking about some of my favorite true crime documentaries. Let's investigate. Welcome to Check It. My name is Christopher Mychael Watson, actor and voiceover artist, and this show is just where I bring you some things in pop culture I've checked out and I find to be dope. That's it. It's that simple. And today we're going to be talking about my one of my favorite genres in movies, and that's documentaries, and specifically true crime documentaries. I've always been into true crime documentaries and just documentaries in general. And I'm sure, like most of you, over this pandemic and quarantine, I just kind of devoured any and all documentaries that I had on my list that were recently on my list that I had never heard about. And that brought a lot of true crime docs my way. And I'd always kind of been into it, whether it was unsolved mysteries when I was a kid, which terrified me. Terrified me. I remember specifically there was this one episode about an elevator that just plummeted to the ground, and they're like, it's unsolved." And as a child, I just never wanted to hop on an elevator again.
Perhaps tonight we'll find some answers.
And with so many of these documentaries out here, I figured it'd be kind of helpful to go through my list of can't miss ones, because there's so many, and they're all pretty good usually. Honestly, I haven't seen too many documentaries where I was like, and if I did, I just cut it off. But these are ones that I say for sure, if you have not seen, check out. So let's get into the list. And this list is in no particular order. I highly suggest you really check all of them out. First up, we have Murder on Middle Beach, which is a 4-part documentary by director Madison Hamburg about the unsolved 2010 murder of Barbara Hamburg, his mother. Now, what made this documentary immediately striking to me is, as I just said, the filmmaker is the son of the victim that's in question here. And very few, I think, documentaries have that much of an investment in the actual story. A lot of these either investigators or journalists are, following these stories and these threads because that's their job, that's their occupation, that's their passion. But this filmmaker, Madison, has a personal stake in this. Not only did he lose his mother, in a way, you can say he also lost his father, because his father is the prime suspect in this case. And what's so interesting, too, is that Madison, the filmmaker, still has a relationship with his father, although it is obviously strained. And you can tell that from the first episode. However, he does not hold any punches. And you can see, obviously, it's a challenge for him to want to ask his father these questions, continue to, relive this and bring this up. But he does a fantastic job in doing so. Something else that you get from this documentary is, as I said, the filmmaker is related to the victim. And with that in mind, he has access to pretty much the entire family. And let me tell you, this is a cast of characters, his family. And even though his father is the prime suspect, light is shown on a few different members of his family to say, like, I don't really know what to say about Aunt such and such. And that's what's really interesting, too, is that when these people are introduced to you, like in the ledger of the screen, you'll see, like, my aunt, my cousin. It's just so interesting how personally related he is to this family, because so often when you watch these documentaries and tragic events like this happen, so often either family members don't want to relive it, or are reluctant to meet with anyone discussing such matters, because, who knows what their intentions are. They could be, trying to be some gold diggers about their family and personal history. So Madison actually being the son of the victim, and he was already going into filmmaking, so it's not like this is something he just decided to pick up. He was studying to be a filmmaker. He was, I believe, 19 years old when the incident happened, and so it's just a very brave and harrowing tale of a storyteller diving into the most vulnerable story that he can tell, one which happened to him, which he still doesn't have answers for, which someone very close to him who's still alive, his father, might be responsible for. It's just a showcase of tension and emotion and research. He does a good job pushing the boundaries and asking the hard questions and tracking down people who might know something about the murder of his mother. Murder on Middle Beach, you can catch that on HBO. Is one of my top true crime documentaries that I've watched during this quarantine. Next up on the list, we have Atlanta's Missing and Murdered. New evidence comes to light in the abduction and murder of approximately 30 African American children and young adults, occurring over a span of 2 years in Atlanta in the late 1970s and the early 1980s. Now, this documentary was intriguing to me because the hunting ground of the victims is actually where I'm from. I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, and although I was too young to have experienced this while it was happening to be watching it on the news or be afraid of it, it was definitely something that was I guess the term urban legend isn't really correct because it's not a legend, it's a fact that it happened. But there was definitely lore around it in the city, and there were always these there were these murals of children that said like watch, care, things like that. And so you would see the echoes of it through the city, but it wasn't really ever something talked about or discussed or really, anyone ever really sat down and talked to me about. So that was something really interesting for me in this documentary, is just learning the personal history of where I'm from, and also just to know that this could have happened, that 30 children could go missing, be found murdered. I'm talking about strangled, stabbed, all types of manners of death, and it just seemed once again a through line through a lot of these documentaries is how the judicial system and the police department let down the community quite often. Now, that's not to say that they don't come through in some ways, but a lot of these heinous acts and crimes seem to have been preventable if proper police work was done, and if politicians in the higher ups were not obstructing justice. And that seems to be quite the story in a lot of these documentaries. This documentary covers so many things. It covers sex, it covers class, it covers racism. It's just mind-boggling how rampant racism was, and obviously still is in the South and in America in general. But just to see the fact that 30 children could die and no one really moved until like the 10th child was found. I believe 9 children died, and then there was an explosion at a daycare center which killed like 4 more people, and then eventually the cops were like, oh yeah, maybe we should maybe look into this. And it can be infuriating at times, but I think it's important. It's important to watch these things and to learn this history. And it's really so interesting because so many of the family members are still alive, because this didn't happen that long ago, and it was to children. So you're seeing these mothers, you're seeing these siblings of these missing and murdered, really reliving this situation that happened to them, because there really was no closure. There was one suspect who was arrested and charged with these crimes, but no one family story person or person has one narrative on this case. So many people think it might have been the guy who they charged. A lot of people think it's impossible. They say, how could someone of that slight of build, that small, who doesn't have any hard evidence linking him, how could he have done all of these murders? And a lot of them feel like the police department did them a disservice by having a scapegoat. This guy they charge be a scapegoat to all of these murders, instead of really doing the investigation, figuring out what happened. And yeah, so it's heartbreaking in that way. But it's another really good piece of investigative journalism. And as sort of a companion piece to the Atlanta Missing and Murdered, I'd highly suggest to the second season of Mindhunter, where they talk about this case in particular. It deals with the missing and murdered children in Atlanta, and they Mindhunter. If you've seen the first season, or if you've seen this, you know just how well they do in casting, how well they do in just tone of show, and covering these really dark things and making them entertaining. So, along with Atlanta's Missing and Murdered, if you'd like to see more of a narrative take on this and just a good season of television, I'd highly suggest Mindhunter season 2 on Netflix. Next up, we have Don't Fuck with Cats. A twisted criminal's gruesome video drives a group of amateur online sleuths to launch a risky manhunt that brings them into a dark underworld. This, I believe, was one of the first like true crime documentaries that I watched towards the beginning of the quarantine, and it fucked me up. Let me tell you, it's another one of these stories where you sit back and you're watching it and you're really thinking like, did this happen? How could this have happened and I didn't know about it? How could this have been a real thing that happened, I believe, in the last 10 years, if not maybe 15, just to be safe? But there's so much footage because again, it took place in pretty much current day. So you see posts from these people, you see videos, you see all types of things, and it is just mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling what you watch. It starts with a WTF, and then it just keeps escalating from there. I will say that this documentary is not for the squeamish. It's not for people who don't like cruelty to animals whatsoever. I mean, who does? But they don't actually show any acts happening, but they show pretty much right up until that point, and you can kind of use your imagination. So, forewarning for you there. But this was just another study in crazy. You have to be crazy to be these types of people. It really shows you. And I guess maybe that's a fascination that I continue to have with these true crime documentaries, is trying to glean any understanding of how a person who is a person like me can do these things, why they do these things. And sometimes you hear the backstory, and quite often, it's a series of abuse and, things obviously that that person did not control, did not ask for. And obviously they are victims in that way. But then to see the monsters that these sad situations create, and then all the victims that come about of that, it's really interesting. It's really fascinating. Now, on top of just the bonkers story that you're going to hear in watching Don't F with Cats, I think another reason you should check it out is that, again, the cast of characters, although these are obviously real people, I just say characters because we're all characters, right? We all have these quirky things about us, but they are, as they said, armchair sleuths, basically a group of online armchair researchers tracked down and helped to hunt down a killer. And so that's really something interesting to watch, just to see these everyday sleuths who just decided, this is wrong and that I want to do something about this and change it. And just their journey through that, how they went about breaking down the video and seeing all the things in his room. It's very interesting. Next up on our list, we have Confronting a Serial Killer. Author and journalist Jillian Lauren uncovers Sam Little's darkest secrets and aids law enforcement in solving several cold cases. Jillian Lauren races to identify Little's victims. Now, this was another story that I scratched my head and wondered, how had I never heard of this man? And really, how did he do this? How did this happen? How was this allowed to happen? It is another documentary, I think, that highlights the failure that our judicial system faces quite often of the people it's supposed to serve. Sam Little, if you don't know, because you possibly have never heard of him, is America's most prolific serial killer. He has admitted to and has been corroborated with about over 90 murders of mostly impoverished women and mostly women of color. And I think this again goes to show how racism is so deeply intertwined in our society, how we look down on sex workers, addicts, people who we consider on the lower half of the totem pole of society. Because Sam Little was caught several times. He went to court several times and was let off because the people who were trying to put him behind bars, who had charges brought against him, were usually sex workers, women, and people of color. Last but certainly not least on our list, we have The Jinx. The Jinx is a groundbreaking six-part documentary directed and produced by Andrew Jarecki and produced and shot by Mark Smerling. The story delves into the strange history of real estate heir Robert Durst, long suspected in the still unsolved 1982 disappearance of his wife, as well as the subsequent murders of family friend Susan Berman and neighbor Morris Black. The Jinx is the most recent documentary of all of them that I've named on this list that I've seen, and it's still pretty fresh with me. It was pretty mind blowing. I halfway through, I remembered I'd actually heard about this case, which actually made me even more excited for the end of the documentary. I'm not going to tell you just yet. I'm sure you actually have already heard about it, so I really can't spoil it for you. And once you start watching it, you'll realize it. But if you've seen it and if you know what I'm talking about, it's pretty atomic what happens at the end of this documentary. We are following this man, Robert Durst, who is the heir to one of the biggest real estate families in New York, up there with the Trumps. And he's just crazy, bro. I don't know any other word for it. He seems to be off his rocker. And this documentary sits down with him as he tries to basically clear his name of the three murders that are attached to it. And it's just harrowing. I think it is a meditation on how withered and dark the human soul can get. I tend to be someone who wants to give people the benefit of the doubt. I truly do believe in the goodness of human beings. I think there can be rehabilitation of lost souls or whatever you want to call it. But this man here, this was one of those times watching it where I didn't recognize anything human within this man, within his eyes, within his actions, within his morality, because he had none. Robert Durst is one of the most interesting characters in that he is also seeking attention. I think a lot of these, especially these serial killers, they have this, illusions of grandeur. They think they are more important than they are. They think that their quote unquote work is important, or the things that they're doing. And Robert Durst is certainly someone who is under that impression and goes out of his way to get his side of the story told. And oh boy, does it get told. So The Jinx is definitely one. If you are in for a jaw-dropping story, watch The Jinx. Now for a list of some honorable mentions, because there are so many documentaries and they're all really great. I'm just really trying to boil it down to some that I really found interesting and that were just personally really dope to me. But you also have The Killer Inside, The Mind of Aaron Hernandez, The Keepers, The Staircase, and Night Stalker, The Hunt for a Serial Killer. All of these are really good. All of these are really good pieces of investigative journalism. And yeah, like I said, if you are into true crime docs at all, any of the aforementioned ones I have said will be right up your alley, and I really hope you enjoy it. Yeah. Thank you all so much for checking out the show. You can follow me on Twitter at CMichaelW and on Instagram, Discord, and YouTube right here at Christopher Mychael with a Y, Watson. I'm also streaming on Twitch most days, so go follow me over there. And yeah, thank you for checking out the show. Please go check out some of my other episodes I have. That the link should be up there. And thank you guys so much for hanging with you, boy.